insist we wear these. I'm paying, for God's sake.
This, wrong colour, too dull, and no shine.
If they're good enough for the Queen of France, they're good enough for me, and should be good enough for you.
You're all looking in one direction, and if you pay attention, you'll all be sitting there for 2 hours. Now, isn't this a ridiculous game to play? First of all, you are not nocturnal animals. What on earth are you?
We had a strange situation a couple of minutes ago. Someone approached you in a cinema where you were leaving from giving an introduction to your film and asked you to sign a picture, but not with just your autograph, with your life motto. And for a second you were thinking, what should it be? And you wrote down, "Fortune always favors the prepared mind." Can you explain that?
Well, as I suppose in any industry, you're very aware that there's only a certain amount of space for you. And the number of filmmakers who are constantly complaining, I can't get the money, I can't get the circumstances, you know, why doesn't luck favor me more? Why can't I advance my career? And I always get somewhat impatient with those people because the world does not owe you a living. It's up to you to formulate and to organize what you really want to do. You know, Lady Luck might not be coming to knock you on the shoulder next Tuesday, but she might be there next Wednesday. So make sure you're as prepared as you can to make good use of your good fortune when it comes along.
Good morning, Mr. Luther. Good morning, Mr. Luther. Mr. Luther, open your mouth. I am the station dentist. Open your mouth. Open your mouth.
And it seems that you are a person who is very well prepared, not just from the theoretical standpoint, but also from the very practical standpoint to the changes in the media we see in the world. Within the past, say, 7, 8, 10 years, you said very often that from your point of view, the cinema is dead. We're awaiting something new. Well, I know that you said it so many times, but let's just explain it one more time. Why do you think the cinema is dead and what comes after it?
Maybe I could make the best answer to your question by hanging it on a date. There is an apocryphal date now which is basically understood by apologists of the digital revolution. It's the 31st of September 1983. And they reckon that that's the date when basically the idea of the zapper or the remote control was introduced into the living rooms of the world. So suddenly there was a suggestion, however primitive, of choice. And before that, most of cinematic vocabulary and television vocabulary belongs to the people like you, people who are inside the box, who are somehow have a powers, hands on the reins on the powers of a very elitist preoccupation. We don't want you to do that anymore. There is a way. We're talking about popular medium. We're talking about a huge communication potential in the information age. So I think as soon as also you introduce notions of choice, in a curious way, you've destroyed cinema. Cinema is a passive entertainment. You sit in the dark. What on earth are you doing sitting in the dark, first of all, because man is not a nocturnal animal. You are looking in one direction at a square of light. That's all you're doing. And behind your head is 2/3 of the world's activity. And if you're watching a feature film, which I suppose is the apotheosis of cinematic art, you're obliged to sit still and quiet and behave and concentrate for 120 minutes. That's not a very human situation. This is the way that we've been taught to play the game of cinema, but we know that's breaking down all over the place.
Ready, steady, go. Ready, steady, go. Ready, steady, go.
Cinema is deeply related to the bookshop. What are the last big events in cinema? A Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. I mean, these aren't films, these are illustrated books. We can prove it. You can go downtown here and buy the books at the bookshop. But whether your name is Almodovar or Lars van Trier or even Godard or wherever you want to posit it, we have a text-based cinema. We don't have an image-based. Now, every film you've ever seen started life with a text. That's not good enough. That's not good enough for text, for literature, not good enough for cinema. But that's all breaking down now. People don't read as much as they do, or they read in a different fashion. Far more fragmentary, they read off a screen, they don't read necessarily in a book. But it is curious, isn't it, when every situation which is dying always has a last gasp. There are more books published in the world now that less people read, and there are more films being made now that less people see. That really is a symptom of disaster. It's a bit like the end of the dinosaurs. They all end with an enormous flourish, and bang, they're gone overnight. So we should be very wary. I think there'll always be a desire for a grand audiovisual experience. It was true of the Greeks, it's true of the Romans, it's true of religious art in the medieval period, it was certainly true of 300 years of opera, and then little local technology of cinema, begun in 1895. By 1983, it is becoming already archaic.
In the last century, an extraordinary man called Tulse Luper archived his entire life in 92 suitcases. Although his life is still a mystery, we know that he was present at key historical events. Spending his life as a professional prisoner, he managed to collect a large amount of objects and store them in suitcases. In a way, the suitcases represent the world according to Tulse Luper. By gathering and researching the suitcases, we hope to reconstruct Tulse's life and through that discover the true nature of the 20th century.
That doesn't mean to say they're not watching fiction, but they're watching it in a completely different way. They're watching it at home, where there's huge amounts of choice. So you can hold a glass of white wine in your hand, and you can feed the cat, and you can open the front door, and you can look at the film at the same time. So I think we need to make it more fragmentary. We need to make it manipulable. We need to give people alternatives. You can have the 7-hour version, but here's also the 7-second version. You have to have a freedom to be able. The population of the world, what's it now? 6.5 billion people. That's an awful lot of people, an awful lot of majorities, but it's also an awful lot of minorities too.
Well, tell me then, as a multimedia artist whom we've always been, what will cinema remain to be good for Peter Greenaway in the future?
I have a sneaking sort of nostalgic experience about notions of scale. I do like Kubrick's 2001, the biggest film ever for the biggest sense of scale, I suppose, incredibly ambitious. I'm dealing in big, grand events. We are, concerned with sort of phenomenon perhaps which don't exist anymore in the 21st century. Notions of grand ambition, of heroicism, of noblesse, of largesse, of the power of civilization. We don't basically think that anymore, and I think probably it's a good reason we don't, because that also stinks too often, maybe a privilege. But these big ideas, need to be encompassed. I think we always need to have that overview. And I think, there are ways and means. I have enormous amounts of privileges to be able to make an opera there, put a show on here, do an installation here, make a film. And I really do think I am obliged to use the best of those abilities to do something. Let's go back to the beginning of our conversation. Fortune favors the prepared mind.